I'm 7 seconds from home free, but I know, like I've always known, that what got me here won't get me there.
Hello, my name is FAYLITA HICKS, and this is the Writer's Tarot. This reading is going to be for fiction writers, and it's going to cover the week of November the 2nd through November the 8th. I'm going to be releasing these videos once a week, every week on Wednesday. I don't have the time figured out, so we'll know about that probably next week or the week after that, about the regular timing. But what we do know is going to be weekly. Now, this reading is going to open with one card from the ancestors. I always try to ask them to come and join us right at the beginning and give us some guiding for the week, give us a little bit of idea of what we can expect for the week. And right now I'm asking them for fiction writers. Give me some guidance for fiction writers. And this is for all subgenres of fiction. So not just big fiction, but like all genres, all subgenres. You could include screenwriting in that. You can include stage plays, anything that is fictionalized content, comic books, anything related to fiction. And now we're going to get our one card. Wow, the stereotypes are true. The stereotype of fiction writers coming through with the big bank, always, right? And in the literary community, there's a kind of consensus that fiction is where the money is, and we got a 10 of coins in the upright position here. This is the Hoodoo Tarot deck. I am gonna put a link for all of the decks that I read from today in that link. And in this image, what you can see are in the background, there are two older people. They look to be married, and they have huge grins on their faces. In front of them are what looks like their children. So the next generation is in front of them, and they are looking down at their children. It looks like the older parent, the grandparents, and then the parents. And the parents have the gold coin around their necks, and then there are 4 children in this image, and there are gold coins all over the table. And it kind of looks as though the grins on the grandparents' face, when you get closer to the image, which is hard to see, but the brightness of their smiles, I don't know if you can see that at all, but the brightness of the grandparents' smiles look like coins themselves. And so what we see is not only generational joy and happiness and a sense of light and healing, right? We also see generational wealth. Now, generational wealth isn't always just about money. I am now asking, ooh, somebody's gonna get a good book deal this week. Congrats to you. It feels like it is about wealth, but it's also about learning how to use that wealth, right? It's one thing to receive an inheritance. It's another thing to know how to cultivate that inheritance to benefit the people who are going to be here long after you, right? And so it looks like it's not just the money. That is definitely a big part of this. And it definitely feels like that's specifically what it's referring to. So congratulations for real. But it also feels like it is kind of about how we cultivate resources, and how even though we didn't have some of the resources we would have liked, it is our not having that. It was our lack that helped us get into a mode of creating the kind of resources that the next generation can use. So this is not only in our personal families, but also within our communities, right? Saying, man, I really wish I would have had access to, this writer, or to information about agents, or information about like, how do I put together a proposal? And now, because you didn't have that, you were like, I'm going to go figure it out. I'm going to make it. And then I'm going to make sure that people around me have access to it, which is something I personally am really very much about. but this feels like it's a very specific, like if you were a mentee at any point, this is the time for you to start thinking about being a mentor to other people, right? If someone took the time to really help you grow in your craft or in your career, then this might be a time for you to start going, all right, maybe I need to go ahead and make an effort to give in the same way to someone else, right? Because I would not have gotten here if it wasn't for people doing that for me. So I need to do that for someone else. And it feels like that is definitely something that's coming up at this time. Now I'm going to go ahead and hop into our main reading. My last reading lasted for an hour. I am going to try to not do that again because I respect that people have things to do. And so I try to respect their time. But because this is our very first time meeting, this is our very first time having a conversation. I want to make sure I give you a good reading. And so we're going to pull 4 cards. And this is from the Modern Tarot, which has a lot of the classical images on it, but is modernized for, our current context. It's got a lot of tech in it. It's got a lot of cool outfits in it that you would only see from the last 20 years. All right. So funny that card came up. Ooh. All right. And so the way that I've got this set up, it's 4 cards that I've pulled, and the main position is the Hanged One, which is a major arcana card. I am going to describe this card in a moment. But my very first position, this is either a beginning or an ending. A part of the whole entire tarot is not just about going through the story once, but watching the story sometimes come back around, watching it go in an infinite circle of beginning and ends. And so whenever it is an ending, that does not mean just the ending. It means also the beginning. And whenever there's a beginning, it means that something else had to end, and so on and so forth. And so it being in this position, I never really know if this is a beginning or an ending until I've looked at the rest of the cards. And then I'll try to come back and tell you if this was a beginning or an ending based off of the other cards that are next to it. Now, for this card, the Hanged One shows a person who is wearing red pants and a blue top. Underneath their red pants, they are wearing fishnet, which I think is super dope, and tennis shoes. And they've got their arms behind their back, and their head has this wonderful glowing light around it. The original story that most people refer to for this card is Odin. Though there are some things in this image that also suggest Jesus Christ, and that's a whole other conversation. This is not just a Christian reading or anything like that. I'm just letting you know the multiple images that show up in this card, as well as the Tree of Life and a conversation about the Tree of Life, which is yet another another religious reference. And so there are several of them in this card, but the overwhelming message of the card is surrender. And I'm laughing because I was just listening to a podcast in which it was talking about surrendering and how important it is sometimes for us to give in to change. And in this particular aspect, especially with this card here that we just received from our ancestors, the 10 of Coins, what it says to me is it says that we are looking at surrendering to elevation, surrendering to being lifted up, surrendering to being in a different role and one that more people can see you. I made a post on Twitter not too long ago in which I'm like, oh my God, the Poet Laureate can see me. You can see me over here. And how incredibly crazy it feels sometimes when people can see you in your career, where you're not just just kind of starting out, but people are starting to recognize you, remember your name, and reference you in conversations that you are not a part of at all. And how crazy that might seem, but how important it is that you embrace that, because the fact is that elevation brings you closer to the kind of life that you want for yourself, right? And that's not just in terms of fame, that's also in terms of quality of life, right? It means that you have more opportunities to work, more jobs are available to you, more presentations are available to you, more deals are available to you, more audiences, your audience is growing, people want to read you. Like that's what it means. It's like, okay, it's bringing you one step closer to the kind of life that you want to have for yourself, whether that's creatively or that's, publicly Or, even personally, I am asking now for, it feels very much about yourself as opposed to like family or friends. It does feel like this is like okay, this is a dream of mine and my dream is coming true. And that's really happening here. We've got the Page of Wands, and the page here is wearing, I don't even know what these things called. It's not a bodysuit. That's a overall, but it's a shorts. Looks like a skirt, low key. Y'all remember skirts, shorts? Looks like a skirt overall. And they have a red top, and there's a red bow coming out of their hair, and they're holding this wand, and they're looking what looks like to the future. And pages are very much about messages that are incoming. And if you were wondering if it was a yes to that publication or if it was a yes to that award, the answer is yep. Right? This third card did come up in the affirmative. And with the other combining cards, even before I get to them, I can see that this is a yes. A yes, but. And I'm going to explain that but here in a second, because you've got the next card is a Two of Swords. It's also in the affirmative. In this image, the person is sitting on some sort of box. They've got their legs crossed, and they also have two swords in their hands, and they've got those crossed over their chest, and they've got a blindfold on their eye. In the background, you can see water and a blue sky and a crescent moon. Now, when it comes to moons, it does very much mean about having that internal signal that people call intuition or a knowing. And when it's in the crescent, it means part of that is blocked for you, right? So like you are not trusting your gut right now. You're like, I don't know what is right. Like, is me getting this acceptance really going to help, or am I just hoping it'll help? Even if you get a rejection, right, which is always possible, these cards are not final. These are always being influenced by everything from literal planets around us to whatever's happening internally with organizations and publications and so on and so forth. Even if you get a rejection from something you really wanted, this rejection might be the rejection that stimulates a win later on down the line. How that might turn out in a literal way is like, let's say you rejected from a fellowship and you're like, but I really wanted that fellowship. I really needed that fellowship. I needed to be able to spend time working on this book. And now I'm just not going to have that time because I didn't get this one fellowship. And then you're like, you know what? I need to stop depending on fellowships. I need to go and, I don't know, work at this university because I just have been putting that off and I really want to work at that university, but I always said later. Maybe now I need to go ahead and just do that. And that becomes the win, right? And that brings you the kind of push that you need in your career to go forward. That's what I mean by, even if it's a no, there's something that's being blocked, and it kind of looks like when it gets blocked, you just kind of sit there. You're like, oh no, I don't know what direction to go. So I'm just going to sit here until something magical falls out of the sky into my lap. And that is so not the way that they need you to go about it, because the Page of Wands is in movement, right? And even though there is this call for you to surrender, the call to surrender does not mean being still. It means surrender to the unknown, surrender to the wonders of whatever's next. It means allow yourself to take a look around and make a decision. Because this is very much about a choice. Will you allow this to be a catalyst for you, or will you allow this to take you down? So sometimes I know that we've heard as writers the trope of whatever doesn't kill you only makes you stronger. Or what's another way that they say it? Whatever kills you only makes you stronger, and some other ones. This is very much about you have to decide, will you let this win be something that moves you forward, or will you let this win be something that keeps you stagnant, right? Occasionally we can be afraid of success. Occasionally we can be afraid of getting what it is we wanted, because then we have to actually I don't know, do the thing. And this is true for all writers, I think. There are some writers who are so excellent, they sign the book deal and they're like, book is done. Pow, take that. And then there are writers like me who signed the book deal and we're like, oh, great. Now what? I've spent years working on this thing and now I've signed the deal and now I don't know what step to make next. And this is saying, don't be afraid of that. Lean into it. Go into the afraid part and just get to work, right? And it does really feel like there's this decision that needs to happen for you to get to work, for you to decide that it's okay for you to win. Right? Because you can win, but not be okay with that win. Or you can win and feel like you've got to make it smaller somehow so that other people feel comfortable, or make it smaller so that you feel comfortable because you're not used to winning. I'm just going to let that sit for a second because I know that feeling, right? Where you feel like, oh, it's no big deal. It's just like, this thing. And that comes from a place of not feeling worthy of the win, whatever that win is. Because it does feel like it's fairly big for whoever this is for. I don't know who that's for. It does feel like it's fairly big, but even if it's something as small as getting an acceptance for a publication, or getting, an acceptance for a program or a workshop, or winning the local slam, whatever that thing is, there's this feeling of, I haven't decided whether or not I'm okay with being better than I was before. I'm not sure if I'm okay with moving into a space that I've never been in before. And when I say that, I mean like academia, right? It's one thing to rise in academia. It's a whole other thing to rise at the national level for all of our wonderful writers who have gone on to become national greats, and people know your name in Washington, and people know your name in California, and people know your name in Germany, and people know your name like everywhere. Like that's different than like having your family know your work. Having everybody know your work is a lot different. And sometimes we're not okay with that. And so it feels like with this King of Pentacle cards, which came out reversed, the King of Pentacles is sitting on a throne. There are two bull heads on either side of the throne. In the background is the city. And there is a big wall between the throne and the city. And sitting on the throne is this person, and this person has a huge pentacle in their lap, a crown on their head. There's grass and rocks all around them. And in this card, it very much is about this need to like find internal resource of joy and happiness and stability away from others so that you can thrive once you do return to the city, right? And when it came out in the reverse, it's kind of like you haven't done the work to be happy with yourself and to allow yourself be happy. So you definitely don't know how to do it with other people. You've barely allowed yourself to be happy. You've barely allowed yourself the gift of joy. And so it definitely feels like it's asking you to allow yourself that gift of joy. And in the context of these cards, it feels like there's a need to surrender to the path that you're on, to surrender to your success, to surrender to your joy, to surrender to your self-fulfillment, right? To say like, no, it's okay for me to be like, I'm a bad bitch. I'm allowed to say that because I am. Good job, me, right? You don't actually need everybody else's confirmation. You need your confirmation at this point. And so you need to sit down with yourself and allow yourself to celebrate the win, no matter how big or small that win is. Allow yourself to celebrate that win. Let me just ask this card. Let me ask the ancestors. Is this win a big win? Is this a small win? What kind of win is this? Because now I'm just curious. Now I'm being nosy. Okay. There we go. All right. It's a big win. We got the Daughter of Knives, which is also known as the Page of Swords in the traditional deck, and the Hoodoo deck. And it did come out in the affirmative. In the Hoodoo deck, this card has a person sitting in at a table. They've got in front of them their divination tools, some incense, and they've got a light hanging on them from overhead. And even though they got their head covered with like a wrap, they have all of these hands reaching out to them into the light, trying to get to this person. And this very much is about not only being seen and recognized, but being desired, being wanted and having people trying to take part in whatever is going on with you. And so that does feel very, that feels very great. But the other message of that card, right, when it comes to the swords and the message of the swords, it's saying, look here, if you haven't fixed your schedule and prepared for success, and by that I mean, have you set aside time in which you will continue to work on the project that you're supposed to be working on? Or have you set aside time to update your website, update your social medias? Have you put aside the time to decide how much money you want to charge for a reading? Have you put aside the time to find the agent if you're ready to do that? Like what are the things that you haven't done, put aside the time for, and get that ready, because the time is coming. It's on its way already. So you need to get prepared for that and recognize that it might be overwhelming, which is why it's so important that you feel good inside yourself and that you center yourself. Because if you can feel good about it, then you can allow other people to feel good about it as well. And you won't be quite as overwhelmed, right? If you say, oh, it's not that great, but then you got 8 million people telling you it's awesome and amazing, you would think it would be easy to accept that, but that's not always the case. Sometimes, everybody else is like, that's great. And you're like, not as great as it could be. And so there's a need to align yourself with your success and go, yep, no, I did the thing. I did exactly what I was supposed to do. And now I'm happy that I did the thing. All right. So now we're going to get one card from my David Bowie deck. Cause yes, I have a David Bowie deck. One card from the David Bowie deck. And this is just going to be kind of like a creative energy for the week card. Creative energy for the week for fiction writers. And this deck was designed by the guy who created the Thunderbolt for David Bowie. So it's really wild and I love it, which is why I'm not going to take all of them cards. I'm only going to choose one because these cards are so detailed and they have so much information in them. And if you ever get the deck, and I'll put a link in the deal. If you ever get the deck, you'll see just how much thought went into the creation of this deck, which is another reason why I enjoy it so much. All right. So coming out in the reversed, we got the Prince of Cups. And in this image, we have a person is leaning over to pick up a message. The message, it looks like, is in an envelope that has that has been sealed. There's a feather. And it's sitting on top of two skulls that are joined together like a butterfly. It looks like it's literally in the shape of a butterfly. And on the top of its head is a cup with fire coming out of it. I'm going to show the image, but you will understand. This person is standing on some type of pool of water. And below the water is, it looks like someone who has passed is below it. And that person is on top of the bank of yet another like little pool of water. And there looks to be more skulls and bones down there. As well as a whole valley. And so I'm just going to show you this image. And this is why you have to get the deck. I'm going to try to do it also on TikTok so you can kind of see how crazy this deck is. But it's really imaginative. It's got a lot in it. And not just in terms of like the imagery, but like also the symbolism of everything that's incorporated in each card. Kind of crazy in an awesome way. So the general feeling... whenever you get the Prince of Cups, this is generally about not just a message coming to you, but actual movement. And there's just this feeling of too much loss has happened. So much loss has happened that it's hard to accept joy, right? It's like, I want to be happy, but like everything went wrong. I don't even know how this happened. Everything went wrong. Why am I allowed to be happy when I still got to worry about so-and-so's funeral, or I still got to worry about this job that I lost, or I still got to worry about this change in my relationship, or I got to worry about where to live. Like, how am I allowed to be happy when all of these other things have happened, right? And so there's this hesitancy to grab the joy, to allow that to manifest. And that hesitancy, it's blocking us from our creativity. It's blocking us from our imagination. It's blocking us from our joy. And and from our ability to create something truly magnificent. And so when it comes out in the reverse, it's saying that like there's no progress being had. We're letting our emotions, our negative emotions, so emotions that are not productive, we're letting that block us from everything else. We're letting the loss overtake what's been gained. And there definitely seems to be a message of do not let that happen, please, because we cannot keep giving you more if you don't ride the wave, right? Like if you don't allow the amount of energy that it takes to produce a wave, if you don't allow it to keep going, eventually it will dissipate. It will stop. So if you want to move forward, this is a time to move forward, but you've got to allow us to give you joy. And then you have to accept that joy and embody that joy so that it can keep going forward. You got to give it more energy, give the joy more energy. And if you keep trying to block it off and make it small, right, we can only give you so much. So that's that card. I'm going to look for some messages from this crow deck. I'm going to move this here. It's very interesting how each of these readings are coming out so far. And I said I wasn't going to make it an hour, so I'm going to speed it up. All right, the crow deck. This is for incoming messages in the next 7 days. Occasionally it does go to 14 days. One thing I like to think about is that like there might be a decision that's made in the next 7 days that will affect you, but you may not hear about it for a while, right? You might move forward in some sort of, contest or submission process, and you won't know until January. So also consider that, right? But if you need like actual evidence in your life, remember that these are tarot cards. They do not tell the future per se. They are a reflection of the moment. They are a mirror. And so take a look at your life and ask, were there any wins that I got today that were fairly big? It could literally be as small as like... I did not have a cigarette right when I woke up in the morning. In fact, I waited a whole 5 hours. And that's a win because that's the first thing I do when I wake up, right? Those kinds of things can also be big wins because they can represent change is happening. They can be a catalyst. And be like, I wonder how long I can go throughout the whole day without one. I already went 5 hours. Maybe I can go more, right? And so, interesting. Why do you want 4-2? Occasionally the cards talk. And when they talk, they're like, another and another. And I'm like, buddy, we're doing too much. I do not have all the time in the world. Neither does my viewer. Great. So the first one we get here is the 10 of Wands. The 10 of Wands has a crow carrying a bundle of wands all wrapped up, and it's 10 of them. Deep below the ground, you can see a shadow. Also, it looks like something's been buried. Above the crow, you can see the lake that is next to the crow, but also beyond that, the city. And when it comes out in the reverse like this, it can be, again, a resistance to letting down all of that drama, letting down all of that pain and all of those things you've been carrying with you for so long. You just refuse. And they're like, let it go. You no longer need this, right? It may have been what propelled you to do the work that you did to get to this point, but you no longer need it. Drop it. Let it go. And we need you to let it go because we've got this thing here called the star. And your North Star is pointing south, right? Because it came out in a reverse position here. The star has a crow standing in a waterfall. It's got its wings up, and the water is just pouring on both sides of the crow, over both wings into a pool. There's a star above it, and there is another bird on the side of it. There are a total of 8 stars in this image. And the water part of it goes into a pool, and the other part of the water goes into what looks like these little cracks, or, if I was to be extra about it, little tiny rivers. It would have to be a huge crow for this water to be going to little tiny rivers, but you know what I mean? And this crow is definitely representing in the traditional deck where there are 2 cups that the person is holding in the traditional image, and they're just pouring. And they're pouring without having to refill the cup because they have enough. They are enough. They create sustainably out of themselves. The energy doesn't end because they are balanced and they take their time and they transmute energy and they transmute air into water. And so it's just never ending for them. And when it comes out reversed right next to this 10 of Wands reversed, it definitely feels like, hey, the reason why you're not finding the motivation or the inspiration you need to get the next thing done or to really help to bolster the current thing you're doing, it's because you're not surrendering to the situation, right? You're not letting yourself embrace the joy that comes with being in that situation, right? Let's say you get a brand new job that gives you a whole like extra day out of the week for you to just create. The kids are officially going to school, and that means that you have like a good 12 hours every week that's just yours to do with. And you're like, man, I don't know what to do with this time. And so I just wasted, and I'm so upset at myself for wasting this time. Not recognizing that suddenly having this time, that is the win, that is the blessing. And so enjoy it and take as much time as you need, because at some point the creativity will prop itself back up. You'll just be doing something that brings you joy in that time. And that will be the catalyst that you need for whatever creative thing you're doing. And so it definitely feels like if you're losing steam, it's because you're not allowing yourself to embrace the good things that you have received, right? So if you want more of the good thing, you have to allow yourself to celebrate the good thing. Life is going to keep giving you what it is that you want if you can celebrate what it is you have. Gratitude, right? Yeah, that's the word. That's the word I've been looking for this whole time. Gratitude. Really embodying gratitude. That goes yet again for this card. We've got the 3 of Pentacles, and it's a crow standing on top of 3 pentacles. Now, these pentacles are covered in petals, and the crow is standing on top of it. They've got this really cute little petal crown, and they're literally picking cherries from a tree. In the background is another second crow, and that crow is picking cherries from the ground. And there are a couple of messages with this. One, stop cherry picking your joy. You're welcome from the trope. Don't be a cherry picker. Stop saying that I will only be happy if it is this or this or this, and allow yourself to just be happy with all the good things that are happening. And what you'll find is that you have more than enough good things to be excited about and to be happy with and to work with. And you're gonna be like, oh, I don't even know I was stressing about those 2 things. Those 2 things will come down eventually, right? And you will get access to them. But in the meantime, I have more than enough. There are cherries literally on the ground, and you're over here trying to get the ones that are still on the branch because you're not happy with everything else you've gotten, right? Because those petals on the ground that are covering the pentacle, they have cherries attached to them. And yet the crow is still like, nah, I need the ones up here in the branches, man. Those are the ones I need, right? And not all of the other wonderful things that are literally right below their feet. It also speaks a bit to about how other people are operating, because in the background, the crow in the background literally only has 1 cherry in the background and does not have everything this other crow has. This other crow is standing on a mountain worth of resources, and the crow in the background has got 1 tiny little resource, and yet the crow in the front is still trying to get more. He's like, I got some, but it's not enough. And the one in the background is like, thank man, I have at least 1. I got at least 1. That's good enough for me to get started. And this came out in the reverse yet again. And so that tells me that we're in a place, probably mentally, where it's a like, no, I need more. And the real truth is like, bro, I need you to celebrate what you got first. Celebrate what you got first. And when I say bruh or him or her, I am a non-binary femme. And so I am not talking about just the male and the female, and I'm not talking about just, 2 genders. There are more than 2 genders. This is just the way I talk. And I always, whatever today is, a him or a her, could be a her or a him tomorrow. It could be a them. It could be many other things. So I don't ever want there to be the assumption that I'm only talking in binaries. I am not. It's just the way I talk. So, when it's in the reverse, it definitely is saying that you are not appreciating everything that's been given to you. And so you might have to stay where you are for a bit. If you can't figure out how to celebrate what you already have, you might have to just sit with that. We might not be able to give you no more because you don't even like what you got. You're not even happy with what you've already received. And if you can't be happy with what you've already received, even if it is more than others, if you can't be happy with that, why would I give you more? That's the way the universe feels like it's talking. Why would I give you more? And so I'm looking here, and the next card is the Queen of Cups. The Queen of Cups is ball and outrageous. This actually, out of all the cards, right? Like every tarot deck is different, but in this, for some reason, this Queen of Cups always makes me think of my Austin folks and makes me feel very, if you know anything about Austin pre 2010, I would say it's very hippie, and it brings me a lot of joy. This is, can you see this? It's the queen is sitting on this throne. It's this queen crow sitting on this throne, and the throne is completely like covered in starfish and fish and crabs and a dolphin and a cup filled with crow, and like there's just all kinds of stuff on here. I don't even know what half of this is. There's a lotus flower. There's so much stuff on this throne, and behind the throne is water. It's the ocean, and there's a crescent moon in the background. And this did come up right, and it feels like it feels so full, right? It feels very much like this Daughter of Knives in terms of like how much is crowding. And then also it feels very much like this Ten of Coins. And so we're talking about from our ancestors, we already got that, like you are already surrounded by all the resources and people and folks and community that you need. But you need to recognize it, and you need to embrace it and enjoy it and like lean into it. The fish, the whale, or the dolphin, I cannot tell what that is. Is it might be a shark. I don't know. Might be looking at it all wrong. Fish, it's another fish animal and a crab. These animals are not just animals. These are part of the animal kingdom. These are your people. These are your folks, right? And if they're telling you that you're doing a good job and you're not, you're like, yeah, but it ain't really. No, I need you to go ahead and accept it and humble yourself to accept that, yeah, you're doing a good job, right? They need you to recognize you're doing a good job. If you feel like, oh, but I haven't done enough and I don't have that one thing that other person has, or I haven't been publishing that one thing that other people have, does not mean you're not doing the work. It means you are doing the work, and it could be yours at some point. But first, like, just be happy with the amount of work you've already done. You've done a lot. Congratulations to you. Celebrate, right? Let me go and get it. I said not another hour, and y'all already see what time it is. Now, I want you to stick around for the end, and that's because I am going to provide some publication opportunities. And so I'm going to put that at the end of the video. And so every week you'll be able to check out the tarot reading and then get a look-see at some publication opportunities for the week. This is a service that I want to offer. I'm calling it a service, but like, I mean, like in the terms of like community service, it's just like so many people are always asking me, but where do I get published? And I'm like, I have 8 million resources for you and never enough time to share them all. And so I'm going to pick 3 every week, and I'm just going to share those 3 for everyone. All right. And this is card that I'm finna pull is, what do fiction writers right now need to be letting go of? And the poetry reading was very specific, so I'm hoping it'll be the same. What are we letting go of so that we can get to the next phase, right? I love it. I love it when it's on point. It says receiving joyfully. And on the cover of this card, there is a person who has a mermaid fishtail, and they have 3 cowrie in a bowl and 1 cowrie in their ear. There's a starfish in the background, and there's a head of another person in the water next to them. And it says, today I will let someone give to me, whether it's a compliment, an offer to help, or even a gift. I will stand there and take it joyfully. I know that I'm deserving of good things. So I will simply say thank you. I don't know about you, but it sounds like that's thematically on point. Receiving joyfully. I called it the letting go because there are some things that we need to let go. And when it says receiving, it means that we need to let go of the idea that we can't receive or we're not deserving enough to receive. Yeah. And this card I'm finna pull is called it's for abundance, right? This is an abundance deck, and I'm always asking for abundance, like where can we find abundance? And so this is for fiction writers. Where can we find abundance? Where can we find abundance? All right. It says courage. It says, let me be open to courageously take the steps that are shown. All right. On this image, we have an elephant. The elephant has one dove that is next to it and another dove that is flying off. The dove that's next to it is actually a little bit more concrete, and the dove that is flying off is a little bit more invisible. There is a lotus flower on the blanket that's covering the elephant. The elephant has its trunk in the air. And it says, again, let me be open to courageously take the steps that are shown. If you know folks who are doing what you want to do in your field or in your community, and you are like, I don't know what to do next, I would ask, right? This would be a time to ask. If you see an avenue that's going to give you success and you know that you're going to be great at it and you're not following through on it, or you're not taking that step towards that path, whatever it is, then you need to do so. I love to talk, and I love to talk about tarot and I love to talk about the spiritual implications of the creative work that we do. And it took me over 1.5 years of talking about this particular YouTube channel and podcast for me to actually get started. And today is the first day, and this is the first reading. And so I took a while not taking those steps because I saw it and I was like, I want to do that. I want to do that. It's not hard. I can do that. And I didn't take the steps. And I can tell you, I'm very joyful about taking these steps. So I hope that you will be joyful in taking whatever your next steps are, no matter what they are, right? Because creativity is creativity. We're going to get us one literary witches oracle card, and then one more card from the African goddess deck. So I am new to this particular oracle deck. I picked it up when I was in Portland for Tin House. I was teaching for the summer workshop this past summer. Quite a few of my decks are from there. As we get more into this series, I will definitely be showing off all of my decks. You can see some of them behind me right now. Talking like there's a whole nother room filled with decks. But so I don't know what all of these have on them. I don't know what to expect. I am asking specifically for fiction writers right now. Okay, we got 1, anything up 2, and okay, 3. We're gonna end that there. They went real quick. So I haven't had a chance to look at their descriptions or anything like that. We're just coming at it fresh. And the first card that came out was the skull. And it is just a skull. It's just a skull. It's a skull, and it says skull. And it definitely feels like this is a conversation about, even inside of literature, whenever we see skull, or whenever we see or think of death, we think of this not just being an ending, but very often in the story, that's where the story begins, right? There are lots of narratives where it starts with the death of someone, and then someone's going to go do some investigating, and then that investigation leads to, and it changes the main character's life, right? Even when it happens towards the end of a story, right? We learn that the reason why the narrative is being told in the first place is because it needed to be told before the death happened, right? Right now in my mind, I'm specifically thinking of the story that was told in first person. I wish I could remember the title. I can't right now. It was told in first person, but it was about a young girl who had been murdered by this person, and was trying to tell the story of her life before and what led up to her death. And so her death technically happens at the end, but the whole entire story is a need to investigate what happened, what brought us to this point in the first place. And so that happens very often, which death is not the end. It is actually the beginning of the thing. And this is true also in tarot, right? In which death is not about endings. It's more about rebirth. It's more about preparing for the next thing that's going to come. It's about being transformed. I was going to say transmuted, but I think transformed is best. Being transformed. And so I feel like even in the context of your reading, of all the cards we looked at, a need for an old version of oneself to die in order so that the new version of oneself can be risen, especially when it comes within our community, when it comes to, literary accomplishments, right? You get published. So excited, right? You get a piece published in a magazine, you get a piece published with a newspaper, you get a piece published, in school, you get a piece published. Whoo, so exciting, right? And now you feel like maybe one day I can call myself a writer. Some people are like automatically like, I'm a writer. I post a thing, I'm a writer, right? But we need that like confirmation that we are no longer just wanting to write. We are actually a writer now, right? So that's one stage. But then for this particular reading, it feels like there's a whole nother stage. Like you signed the book deal, you wrote the book, you sold the book. Now the game is on. Right. And you don't even know that you weren't playing the game until like you sign the thing and you're like, oh, now there's a whole other part of this that I was not prepared for, or that I didn't know was coming. And now I'm stepping into this new chapter of my life, and it is going to be completely different than the previous chapter, because now I'm not trying to sell the book. Now I am fine tuning this thing, and I'm getting ready to promote the thing. Like I did the other part. Now that part is done. And now there's a whole new part that I got to work on. And I got to start all over again and learning how to be in this part of the world. I was going to say stigma. There is a stigma, but there's also this like crossing that threshold, right? Like when your peers, when all of you start at the same time and then one person gets published and you're like, okay, now there's a whole new chapter and my peers are no longer doing the same things that I'm doing at the same time. And we're on different paths now. And I feel bad about going forward, and this need for you to be okay with shining for your moment, because their moment's going to come, right? They're going to get to shine when their time comes, and you're going to want to support them during that time. But for now, it's your time to shine, and you need to allow that to happen, right? So also stepping into that new chapter as well. And so very much a death of the old self and a rebirth of the new self. The next card that came out was Anise Nin, and it says the subconscious. And so there's a lot of emotional ties with this. I didn't want to make this another hour, but it's going to be one. There's a lot of emotional, because water has been a theme for majority of this reading. And the idea of mermaid and something happening beneath, within the context of the emotion. Water is very much about emotion, but it can also be about time. And so there seems to be some sort of darkness happening here. In the image for Anise Nin, we see two dark people. When I say dark, I mean like literally they look like night, and they've got little eyes coming out of them. And Anise Nin is sitting in the middle of that, and is surrounded by what appears to be waves. And it's very grayscale. So like the waves are not blue, are green, they are gray. They are gray. And there's writing all around Anise Nin. And because I haven't read this book, I'm going to go ahead and pull up Anise Nin, try to see if I can get what this book says. It says the subconscious, the unexplored, submerging, surfacing. Born to Cuban parents, Anise Nin, 1903 to 1977, was sensitive, magnetic, fashionable, was raised in Europe and New York. As an adult in Paris, she forged a fluid new literature of female consciousness. Much has been made of her erotica, but her chief artistry is in the non-lurid works. Nin's fiction and her masterpiece, A Lifelong Diary, explore the fractured self, her complicated feelings for her father, psychoanalysis, love, and adventures of all sorts. Right? So again, I think that is part of this, right? Because we see all of these eyes staring out of the other two figures in this image, just like we saw all of these hands here. and all of these additional spirits trying to get access, there is something to be said about allowing yourself to celebrate this moment. One of my things that I talk about very often is the fact that for a lot of folks, the reason why we can be so joyful when we like are over ecstatic, super loud, jumping all around, like it's just uncontainable joy, it's probably because there's also a ton of grief associated with that, a ton of loss, a ton of failures, a ton of things that did not go the way that we wanted them to go. And just kind of like in this card here where we see the water overtaking the joy of the Prince of Cups, right? Understanding that we've got to we got to get control of our emotions and not let it keep us from the truth, which is that we did good, right? Even though things sucked, even though things were hard, we still managed to do good. And that is, it definitely feels like it's a part of that message of part of Anise Nin's success. I almost say Anise Majani. Part of Anise Nin's success is in part of the success was in recognizing all that Anise Nin came through, right? And using that to fuel the creative work without letting it overtake is the message though, right? Don't let it overtake you, but let it fuel the work. Last card we got here is Eel. And this eel is doing the, it's almost closed infinity sign. Could be read as the letter S, but I'm seeing it as almost close to the infinity sign. And yet another sea creature, another creature of the water. And that creature is going to definitely have the power to do some damage. I'm trying to remember if what I had heard about eels was true. I can't remember if it was eels or another creature, but I think eels are the only ones that no one's actually seen breed, I think. You have to tell me in the messages if I'm right or not, but I think there's like this common knowledge that like we've actually never seen eels do the thing. They just kind of venture off and then come back with babies. And that's very interesting that there's a part of the process of creation that no one else can see and no one else can partake in. And very much it's a part of being by ourselves and accepting what's happening in our own space without trying to wait for outside validation or outside input. One last card to help me give reference to this. I like these literary witch cards so far. Not bad. I've only done 3 readings with them. This card is going to be our last card for the day. Like I said, stay tuned. I'm going to put up a list of upcoming publication opportunities for you. In the coming month, I plan on doing a special video about contests, fellowships, awards, all that other fun stuff. So that way you can always know what's going down and start looking for opportunities to get your work out there. But for this last card from our African Goddess Rising deck, I'm asking for fiction writers, 1 card for the reading, 1 card that they can take home with them, an affirmation, a word, an idea, an image for the fiction writers for this week. Oh, well, we got 2. They wanted to come out anyways. So I love it because we got a return to water here. And we also got, I love it when my cards do this. And this is why I felt like I had to start doing tarot because all this kept happening over and over again to me. We have a tête here with the number 14 and it says worthiness. It says worthiness on this card. And we can see this person here is chilling. We got the infamous yes ands in this card. If you take a look, is it that yes ands? And what's really lovely is that it's mirroring that star card, and in some ways also the I'm gonna find my star card here that I put away in the deck because I was living my life There we go. So I'm going to show you this, right? This is our card, Worthiness, that we just got from the African Goddess Rising deck. You saw me pull that. Previously in our Crow cards, we got the Star, which has the two quarts of water. We see the water coming out of the waterfall and falling on either side of the crow's wings. And then we got our Two of Swords, which shows us sitting in front of water with our arms crossed and two swords. And in this card, we see that the arms are crossed, but not as much inside of a Tet's card. And if you take a look towards the hips, you see two teapots that are pouring liquid. I wouldn't call that water. It looks like coffee or tea. I'm pretty sure that's tea. Everything in me wants to say that's tea. But we see that there is like we call this God level, right? Where you go from not only holding the pots yourself and pouring the water yourself to like, I don't even need to hold the pots. I'm going to let the pots pour themselves and then the water's going to come. And that's where we get to the point of your creativity where you no longer have to fight for the inspiration. You no longer have to dig for the inspiration. You wake up and it's just there, right? The ideas just come to you naturally. And that does happen to some folks. Not everybody, not all the time. But it does happen. There are points and times where we get to a place in our creative selves where we've accepted who we are, and we've accepted what our flaws are, and we've accepted what our strengths are. We've accepted ourselves in whole, like in its entirety. And when we get there, suddenly, yeah, of course I could make that. Of course I could do that. Yeah, I know what I'm doing, right? That kind of confidence is really something that's hard earned. But when it arrives, you need to accept it. And so the affirmation for this card, I am pulling from the book. It says, Goddess of Worthiness, Great Goddess Atete, Queen of the Gods, is a fierce protector of women and girls from the Oromo people of Ethiopia. Her guidance, stop hiding, shrinking, and playing small. Stand tall like the majestic sycamore tree. You are mighty. Life does not need to be perfect for you to embrace your own perfection. You matter. Worthiness is in your veins. Accept yourself now. Your birth certificate says that we need your overflowing magic, joy, and vulnerability. And most importantly, we need you. You are deserving and worthy. The beautiful parts of you that everyone likes are worth loving. The parts you or others dislike are worth loving too. Your creator loves you unconditionally. And the affirmation is, I matter. So I think that's accurate to this reading. I have one last card for you, then I'm going to let you go. And yes, we did make this a whole hour, even though I tried not to. I'm going to work on this, guys. I'm going to try to get these more digestible for everyone. But let's go. Sara Lakali with Divine Lineage. In this image, we see this person is like got all of these beautiful robes, and we're going to cut this so I don't go into all the colors and the meanings of all of that. What you do need to know is that the crown is coming down onto this person's head, and they are backed up by all of these waves. The waves haven't crashed yet, but the waves are coming, and that is what is to be known. And it's very wonderfully infinite and timely that the first card we received was generational. Oh, sorry. There was a problem with Apple. Hey Siri, stop. I think it's wonderfully, sorry, my Siri started talking, so I had to pause and cut that. I think it's wonderful that the very first card we received from our ancestors was the 10 of Coins, which shows generational wealth. And the last card that we receive is Sara Lakali, which gives us divine lineage, because this is also about inheritance. This is also about the things that are coming forth for you. This was your path. It was always your path. And they need you to accept that, right? To accept your crown. Go ahead, sit down, accept the crown. I say what I said. So we're going to go ahead and read this confirmation here for you. And please put this in the comments if you liked it. And like and follow and share and all that whatnot. I'm going to learn how to do this YouTube talk in which I say, follow me. But for now, I will leave you with this. Sara Lakali, goddess of divine lineage. Great ancestress Sara Lakali, meaning Sarah the Black, was an Egyptian prophetess and the patron saint of the Romani people. Oral history says that Santi Sada had the highest divine lineage. Your ancestors protect the Holy Grail. The Holy Grail is you. Divine ones walk beside and within you. Trust. Your ancestors want to remind you that you are not alone. They are rooting for you. They ask you to honor your spirit guides and call upon the power of the divine. Create or nourish your ancestral altar or shrine. Unbury your ancestors. Speak their names. Your divine lineage ancestors may be blood related or culturally or spiritually connected. Your affirmation is, I am my sister and my sister is me. You were quite literally destined for this. As Chani of the Chani app says, you were born for this. And so congratulations on whatever your major accomplishment is. And if you managed to make it all the way to the end of this video, please share with me, what was your major accomplishment? Like, what was the thing? And maybe you could share like next week or something, or like just update me when it happens. What was the major accomplishment that happened when you finally got to this video? Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.